Let's talk about the new Nuketown loading screen, because for some reason, we've neglected to do so. I mean, I briefly spoke about it on Zombros, however, I've never made a formal video on the topic, so it's definitely worth discussing. If you don't know, at the end of the Call of Duty Zombies comic issue 1, you can find this image. It is a new version of the Nuketown loading screen. It's not actually in-game, it's just at the end of the comic book. And for reference, this was the original Nuketown loading screen that is still accessible in-game. This image baffled us for months. We didn't understand what was going on. We had two weird silhouettes in front of this massive drill, and there seems to be a lot of energy or electricity either flowing in or out of it. We can't be certain. There's this weird figure controlling the drill, perhaps, and then the final box in the bottom right corner doesn't really make much sense either. It almost looks like part of a Star Destroyer. Like, we have no idea what the hell is going on in this image, and it came at a time when it didn't really fit into anything we understood in the zombie storyline. It left us guessing. And a theory popularized by Milo Mr. Raffle Waffles recently was that this scene is actually underwater, and this is because the scene is so blue, and you also have this man in this suit, perhaps a suit that gives him oxygen while he's underwater, and then there's all these bubbles, as if they're little bubbles of air that have just popped up as a result of him breathing through the suit. That was one of our best guesses we had about this image. We never actually had a true good understanding of what was going on in this image. So let's take a look at this new version of the Nuketown loading screen. The first and the most important detail you'll notice is that the candy bar has been bitten out of. So that's obviously what we need to focus all of our energy discussing. Now, we have a bunch of different perspectives. It's as if things have been zoomed out. For example, we have two people now looking at the machine. They're looking at it from a distance, and we get a better idea of the mechanism that surrounds this machine. It's a giant dome, and it seems to be standing on several legs, so it's not actually floating. We also get a better look at the guy who seems to be piloting the machine. Once again, it leaves us asking many of the same questions, but it's definitely cool to have a new perspective on this image. With this new perspective, there are a couple of assertions we can make. The first one is that this scene is not underwater. You can clearly see clouds in the background as well as a mountain, which suggests that this image is not underwater. So why there are bubbles in the image of the guy in the cockpit is difficult to say. In addition to that, a lot of people look at this crater and suggest that the crater is in Nevada, mainly because this is a massive wide open field. There's like one little building off in the corner that now we can see. Perhaps that's a house near Nuketown, maybe? Who even knows? It's difficult to say. That's just one theory that I've seen thrown around. One of the really cool things that we've learned from this image is that we understand now who is piloting the drill. It's actually Dr. Schuster. If you don't know, Dr. Schuster was one of Richtofen's partners when he was planning the betrayal of Dr. Maxis. He gave him a helping hand when they were working on the teleporters. He was his right-hand man as they worked on that project in secret, and then he was also working with Dr. Groff on the moon as they try to study and understand and power the pyramid on the moon. Now, he most likely died in the fallout of everything that happened on Moon, when in one universe, Samantha went nuts in the pyramid, and in another universe, we blew up the moon. Either way, now we have this figure, Dr. Groff. You can tell by his name tag. It's difficult to read, but most people agree this is Dr. Groff now powering the drill. And this makes us, one, think that this is a Group 935 device. This is something they're working on, which is an interesting perspective and makes me think that maybe it's not in Nevada, because why would Group 935 be allowed to work in Nevada? There's no way they would be allowed to drill such a massive thing in Nevada. It has to be somewhere else, which then might draw the thought of the moon, but it doesn't really look like they're on the moon. We have sky, we have like a sky, clouds, a mountain range, so the location of this image to me still slips me, and I'm not ready to jump on board and say it's in Nevada. So once again, we have a lot of questions that we still had from the previous loading screen. However, now we have a little bit more perspective as we now think this is a Group 935 device and Dr. Schuster is powering it. Now, one more thing I'd like to talk to in relation to this image is a cipher we have on Garad Crow V. When solved, we get the message. Finally, the lab is almost complete. Security measures have been put in place so that the chance of detection by the Americans is very unlikely. We also have several agents embedded within the blank as insurance. We will keep the individuals in stasis, on ice to speak, and continue the specimen rotation once we finish drawing more power from the drill. Oh, I almost forgot. The sequence for the current blood sample is as follows: SSMJ ABR. So let's first talk about the beginning, detection by the Americans. Maybe they are in Nevada and they're trying to be low-key and they don't want the Americans to find out about this. However, I don't think you can be low-key with such a massive drill, so I don't think this points to them actually being in Nevada. I just think they don't want the Americans to see them working on this device wherever they could be. They also directly mention a drill, which is why I believe this cipher is discussing the Nuketown loading screen. What other drill is there in the zombie storyline? And they're talking about drawing energy, and there's all sorts of energy that we see in this image. So maybe this cipher provides context as to what the drill is actually doing. The energy is flowing into the drill, not out of the drill, and maybe that giant thing above it is perhaps a battery. Just a theory. And at the end, they discuss blood samples from SSMJ ABR. Now, what people have done is looked at that and go SS Samuel Stuhlinger, MJ Marlton Johnson, AB Abigail Brierton, R Russman. And we theorize that maybe this relates to the Transit Crew, who have of course made a comeback in the Call of Duty Zombies comic. So maybe this cipher is actually directly related to the Nuketown drill and the Call of Duty Zombies comic featuring the Transit Crew. So this is cool to give us a little bit of perspective on the drill if this is actually the case. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen revamped loading screens. We originally saw this with the Moon loading screen. They changed it right before Black Ops 3. We have this image and this image right here. A lot of people suspected maybe we'd get a remake, however, there never was a remake, so that theory is pretty much gone. But what if this is just another in a series of future loading screens, possibly from changed or fractured realities? Who knows? It could definitely be interesting, and I would keep an eye out for it. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of every Call of Duty Zombies comic over the next 5 issues, we get a new loading screen revamped, and maybe by the end of it, we can finally piece together what Treyarch is getting at with all of these altered loading screens. That's going to wrap things up for this video. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I'm of course covering the zombie storyline almost every day, so if you want to stay up to date with the latest information as well as the latest theories, I'd recommend you stick around. I'm going to go, have a great day, and bye.